two of your books, Skulk and The Lamentations of Julius Marantz, deal with the 9/11 terrorist attacks. How and why did you become interested in the events surrounding 9/11?
When I saw the buildings go down, I knew something was up because, frankly, no structures collapse that way. When structures, any kind of structures, are asymmetrically wounded, they collapse asymmetrically. We've known that since the time we built, blocks, and, a block got kicked out on one side. It went like that.
That's just logic. If you have a tall building and it's hit from one side, it'll go over.
Yeah.
It won't come down straight.
Exactly. It's not even logic. It's the perceived common sense that we have about structures. We have a lot of perceived common sense about airplane crashes. Airplane crashes leave wreckage. And when you have the Pentagon, theoretically of 757, going into an 18-foot hole, they don't fit in 18-foot holes. No window glass cracked by the wings, where the wings would have no glass cracked by the tail, and then no wreckage.
And these two big engines were on the side, too, and there were no holes for that.
Yeah, and on the ground, right. And no holes for that, and no wreckage. No, where are the engines? Oh, it was so hot that everything vaporized. Ridiculous. That's ridiculous. We know how planes crash. We know how planes crash into buildings. And the engines burn the jet fuel so they don't vaporize. And somehow the ability to put that out as an official explanation, and there's hundreds, probably 1,000 other sillinesses in the official story. Depending on the level you want to investigate, the temperatures are wrong. If you look at the temperature of that jet fuel burns at and the temperature that steel melts at, and that kind of, it just doesn't match by a big amount. So, you can get deeper and deeper into it. You can do a kinetic energy analysis to determine what blew out all the concrete. Where did that energy come from? So, you look at these things, and as anybody that has been science-trained and science-based and just is basically rational, and if you have a suspicion about the stories that the government tells, which as a peace activist, who had been lied to many times in my life from the Gulf of Tonkin on, you begin to ask what's really going on. And so I think the thing that allowed me to get into it was David Ray Griffin's first book, the New Pearl Harbor. And all he did in that book was to lay out the contradictions between the observed evidence and the official story. And that's all. And he said, look, there are 8 levels in which you, the reader, need to try to understand these contradictions. Anywhere from the U.S. took advantage of this event, which happened, as they said, to gain a pre-established agenda. We know it was pre-established, what Bush did, because it was written about since the early 90s, the Project for a New American Century. That's what they wanted. The 9/11 was what they needed. They said so, a new Pearl Harbor. That's why the book is called that. And Bush was then able to take the project forward. From that level of taking advantage of, to achieve a pre-established agenda to level 8, he spells out the levels, level 8, active planning and execution of the event on the part of the government. Active planning and execution. Okay, well, that's a good project. What do I make of each of the events that happened on 9/11? Where did they fit in the Griffin's 8 levels of complicity? And so I've been looking at that. I'm not a primary researcher by any means, but I read a lot of the material. I look at the films. I look at the clips. I look at the analyses. And by the time I wrote Skulk, I was pretty convinced that the government was in large part, or aspects of the government, were in large part responsible for 9/11 and took it, and then went ahead to take advantage of it. And that's without going through 9/11 chapter by chapter and verse by verse. That's the general attitude that these characters have as they try to create a teaching moment for America, so that America will be able to stand back and look at what really happened instead of just buying the official story.
Here on the cover of Skulk.
I'm on the cover?
No, on the cover we have the two towers, the Trade Center, right?
Yeah, and they're made up of the stock market quotations.
Oh, I hadn't noticed that.
Yeah. It's just columns of stock market quotations.
And there's smoke coming out of the calendar here on the 11th day of September.
Right.
So this is your most recent published book, Skulk.
It may be that the nose is, maybe that this one is. I don't know. They both came out within a week of one another. I didn't plan it that way. This is one publisher, that's another publisher. Yeah.